Hi, I'm Alfred Eames. We're in our little wine library here next to the cellar. We started our winery in year 1999. I've been making wine for about 50 years, and I think we are going to talk about the Tempranillo. Um, Tempranillo was my first love in wine. It's actually the first wine I ever tasted in 1964 in Spain. Loved the stuff, and we were fortunate enough to find some Tempranillo here well, actually in the Grand Valley up on East Orchard Mesa that turned out to be some really excellent Tempranillo. Tempranillo grows in an area, well, most famously in the Rioja region of Spain, and that's where I was, and it actually, that region has some very close similarities to our AVAs down this way. The climate, the soil, a little bit colder here, possibly a little bit more challenging conditions, but as it turns out, it's a very good varietal to grow here. We have been, let's see, that was 2009. We made our present Tempranillo is that we're selling right now is 2016, and we're moving into 2017 very shortly. All right, other than Tempranillo, we have three blended wines. Blending is what we really like to do. By the way, when I say we, I'm talking about me and my son Devin, who is now a partner with me in this business. He grew up making wine with me as a little boy, and he knows all about it. So it's wonderful having him with me. Anyway, so our three blends are what we call the collage. It's Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. A very well-known blend in California. They call it a Meritage. It's almost always a very good blend. You know, it depends on the season. And our wines are not made, we don't make them to be consistent year by year. We make them very simply, very straightforward, no additives. We really want to express the year, the vintage. So anyway, the other most popular blend, the other very popular one is Sangre del Sol, Blood of the Sun. It's a similar blend, except that it has quite a bit of Syrah in it. It's usually somewhere around 40% Syrah. And the other one we call Vino Tinto, red wine in Spanish. And it ends up, it's pretty much what's left over from all of our blends. It's got usually just about everything in it, all of our reds. That includes Pinot Noir, Syrah, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, sometimes some other stuff. We have a Petit Syrah coming up. There's a few more I haven't mentioned. Then we always make at least one white in the year, usually one white, although I prefer reds so to drink them. But we like making a white, and it gives white wine drinkers something to drink. And this year's white wine that we actually have two. We have the 2017 Pinot Gris, and then the next year in 18 we made actually it's in 19, a vine we call SBV, which is short for Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier. And it's blended approximately somewhere around 2/3 Sauvignon Blanc and 1/3 Viognier. And it's been very, very popular.
Well, Alfred, that was interesting. I didn't know really all the wines that you produce. And I'd like to know, for the wine that we're drinking tonight, you were mentioning about how it's all natural and it just expresses the year. Well, what year do you feel has been your best?
I don't really have a preference there. That in that on those terms, I think they're just all a little different. And we've grown, or we've used varying amounts of oak in them. 1 second here. I want to thank Patrick for, I think he's still with us here, and I thought his really nice to meet you over Zoom, and really liked your presentation. Love to come up and see you. Anyway, okay, we have used a little American oak, not much. It's a traditional thing, not entirely, but a lot of the Tempranillo in Rioja in Spain is they use American oak. Some of it is what I would think is over oaked for that reason. But anyway, every year has been a little different, and I think the one we're marketing right now, 2017, is a little lighter on the oak than we've had in the past. The next one coming up, the 18, is going to be more oak. So anyway, did I answer what you were asking?
Yeah, I think that means that you like every year.
I do. I do. I love that.
Because it's just, it's expressing the grapes. I wanted to ask, Brian was really nice to put some notes together for everyone about the wines. And in yours, he mentions fermented in open vats.
Okay.
So
yes, they are. All right. Well, we use, we do, with our red wines anyway, we do open vat fermenting almost entirely in masonry vats. And it's the way I learned how to make red wines in Rioja. And we just like the way it works. They're not isolated from the environment. They are exposed to quite a bit of oxygen, and it's just the old-fashioned way of doing it. And I like the results.
So Eames, I think we're first exposed to open vat by your place, and in 2009 or 10 we went to Argentina and saw the open vat wines there, and I mean everybody was doing it, and I really appreciate the uniqueness of that amongst American winemakers. I don't know, there's a whole lot of American winemakers that are doing open vat. It seems to be a bit of a minority. And hey, Devin, you're there. Thank you.
Hey, had to come in. Good to see you.
Good for you.
Well, yeah, and there's a reason for that. It can be a great risk to do such a thing. You invite, the previous guy doing this was talking about beer, and they're specifically sours, and there is a great history of beer in open vat fermentation as well, but there's an enormous risk to that, right? Especially in beer. But you invite in a great deal of the natural elements, the terroir, the local organisms, and what have you. Wine tends to fortify itself a great deal more, but you still get those attributes. And so not a lot of winemakers want to do that, especially any bigger than we are, because you are risking an enormous amount of wine, whereas we can play with the idea. We can use the terroir kind of to a maximum, and hopefully, if we're really lucky, get away with it and have something good.
Yeah, we get the flavor of lots of bugs. And, is that an answer? You might
A little protein in the wine is healthy, right?
A little protein. No. We don't. What we don't have is you know, people walking around in the open vats, you know, crushing the grape. Like
So,
feces.
Alfred, I guess if I'm not mistaken, Tempranillo comes from the Spanish temprano, early.
Yes.
And that means the grapes are picked a little bit early? Is that correct?
You know, I'm not really sure why it was called Tempranillo. It was a grape that was imported to Spain by the Romans back a couple thousand years ago, and they called it Tempranillo. I think it was just a little. This is my sort of what I've sort of gathered is that it was a little earlier than some of the other grapes they had tried there in terms of its bud break and not necessarily its harvest. But they were doing Grenache and what is these names didn't really exist when these wines were being made. Grenache, Cabernet Sauvignon, which they also grew up there, a number of others in the Rioja region.
But the grapes that you get, are they picked a little bit earlier and harvested earlier, or is it just a normal?
No,
Quite the contrary.
no. They are not harvested earlier than most of the other reds that we do up there. I don't think it really the word applies to harvest. I think it was bud break, but I'm not positive of that. You know, you might be able to research it and find out.
I mean, some of the history of these names are a little enigmatic in some way, where they a little bit early could mean something completely different than what they
Right.
do
Romans.
here. You know,
Well,
whereas, sorry, go ahead.
According to Wikipedia, which is obviously the fountain of all truth,
Right.
it's a reference to the fact that it ripens several weeks earlier than most Spanish red grapes. So
Well, all right.
But that's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit, is that region to region that changes for
Right.
for any of those things. They do that maybe over there. Here they actually do not. We actually harvest the Tempranillo later than almost any other grape most of the time, and that includes most other Mediterranean varietals. So a little bit early. I mean, it kind of falls into the category of petite syrah, which I can't ever figure out because there doesn't seem to be anything petite about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of GSM, and I love your collage. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, my brother, my niece's wedding in Uray many years ago now served your collage, and I really enjoy it. And so now I realize, is it fair to say that that's a quasi, am I allowed to say this without offending you? GSM-like? In the style of GSM?
Are you talking about genetically modified or something?
No, Grenache
Grenache
Syrah
Syrah
Mauvert.
Oh, Grenache Syrah, what?
Mauvert.
Mouvert or
No.
Mourvedre.
Well, no.
Mourvedre.
Mourvedre, yeah.
Okay. I actually never heard of that one, but
Oh, it's a nice red blend. But your collage, what's your collage again?
it is Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot in,
okay.
in almost equal
Equal.
proportions.
It's
But
lovely.
it varies year to year.
It's very
have a
nice.
question. Alfred? Hello, you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
I have a question, Alfred. Now, you most of your wines you make and sell, they are blends. And when you have a certain formula to blend, do you change the same? Do you use the same formula for every year, or do you change it according to the well, to the taste of your customers, or how does it work?
Oh, it is not the same every year. It's different every year. Uh, it depends, well, pretty much on the taste of, when we decide, Devin and I get together, and my wife Pam as well, and often, and we just mix stuff up, and what we like, that's the proportions that we use. And it also depends a little bit on how much of each of those varietals that we have.
Well, and as everybody understands here, we do not live in any kind of temperate climate. Everything changes here and seems to be changing more rapidly. The grapes themselves do so in kind. They come out differently every year. And aside, not attempting to modify them and structure them the way that we want them structured individually, we adjust what they are, by blending and not by modifying the individual grapes. So every year we come up with something similar. Indeed, the sangre will always have the flavor of the sangre and the collage the same way, but it takes a great deal of adjustment every year to find that adjustment.
That I think is a great marketing angle too. Not to disparage, not to take away from the craft of the winemaking, but you've got to have it every year because you got to see the flavor of that year. So I think that's a very good hook.
So, but along those lines, something that they're so my frame of reference are the wines of France, the wines of California, and what I have always found, what I'm finding very interesting about listening over the weeks to the winemakers in Colorado is that there is this for want of a better way to put this element of experiment or sort of loosey-goosey almost in terms of every year it's going to be, I had a little bit of this left over, so I tried that, or I let the wines do what they want to do. Creativity in it, a sort of, that I have the sense is very different from what the California wine business is all about. And is that just because I'm only familiar with these brands that find their way to the East Coast? And if we were to have a Zoom conversation like this among a bunch of vintners in California, would they all be talking in this same sort of way of, well, I had a half a barrel of this, I had a half a bunch of this and a bunch of that, and I put it together, or as Eames says, that, as Alfred says, that we let the wine sort of do what it wants to do from year to year?
Okay.
I mean, I'm curious from both.
Let him say
I'm sorry, I'm curious from anybody who's a winemaker on here to answer that.
Yeah, well, the European, I learned about wine in Europe long time ago. And their tradition, and also the development of their wines over there are more and more regulated. And so whatever the value of that is, great. That it simply doesn't apply, and for a number of reasons. I mean, number one, we're Americans. We're a little loosey-goosey, as you said, and also we don't have specifically defined appellations as much as they do, especially in Colorado. California has moved a little more that way, but not really. And so, yeah, it is a little more experimental, I think. But, you know, to me, in all honesty, I can't really, I'm not a wine connoisseur myself. I really don't have a great deal of experience tasting wines from all over the world in a serious way. I was exposed as an 18-year-old to French and Spanish wines mostly, and like them very much. And my methods, and I think Devin has you know has enjoyed doing this as well, are pretty much just inventing whatever if we like the taste. And it's like when people come to taste wine here, generally I say, you know, I don't describe the wines for them. Don't try to influence their thing. Do you like the wine? What do you think of it? If you like it, wonderful. I like it, and that's sort of the bottom line, so to speak, of our.
Well, as an answer to your question, if I may interject, it's sort of a chicken or the egg conversation, where all of these things started with great accidental innovation, largely people putting things in vats separately. And they came out to be something great, totally by accident, you know, and that happened over large regions. And of course, those great things that they discovered became very coveted and became.
Yeah, and that's in fact what I was thinking as I was thinking last week about all this, is that you folks out in Colorado have not been at this nearly as long as they have in California, let alone in Europe. So perhaps we're seeing here what Europe and California were like several hundred years ago. Right. I mean,
indeed.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
We hope to do that. Absolutely. Kind of break that mold. You know, California got into the idea of specific varietals.
Right.
I mean, there was the big thing, having a cab and so on and so forth.
I
But to sort of re-expand that idea of blending, and hopefully, like the man who spoke right before me, Patrick, you know, branching it into a beer market. He's combining two different ideas, and let's see where that comes from.
I have a question.
So one thing, Devin, I see you being the quintessential storyteller for the North Fork Valley. I love it. You represent us very, very well. Number two, one of the things in traveling to other countries and other areas, whether it's Europe, whether it's South America, it's about regionalization, and the wine, the beer, the beverage for the terroir, for the region that we live in. And California markets sold themselves out to being the homogenous market that year after year would produce the same Merlot, the same, the same thing. I think we have a wonderful story here of a regional representation and a regional product of Western Colorado. And that is, to me, extremely marketable. And what I love about the wines from your dad, from your winery, it's about your taste. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's okay. It's what you do because you love it. And that's our regional moniker.
Alfred, I have a question. Hello.
I don't,
Me,
go ahead, Oli.
I have a question. You know, I don't know anything about winemaking, so bear with me. So I do not want to, but here's my question. When you do the blending, do you blend the different grapes from the very beginning, or do you blend after you made those different wines?
We blend them after, we do isolate them during fermentation, mostly anyway. We have blended during fermentation, but mostly we give them, a few months after at least after the first racking, until we start experimenting with the blending. Oftentimes it's is as much as a year in the barrel before we do our experimental blending.
It gives it time to understand what it's going to become. Like the previous sort of conversation we had about not being in a temperate climate, and it's not the same every year. We have to understand what it's going to be beforehand, because we do not have some base reference. This is exactly what you're getting. We don't know that, so we have to let them become what they're going to become, because we have to be able to understand what those flavors are. And so we do try to come up with consistent blends from year to year, but to do that, it changes every year. And I promise you, they're nothing alike. The
Yeah.
quantities from one year to another, it change in a huge way. But yet it's the same wine. It's the same flavor, and that is only because we are not manipulating something before it happens.
So-
That's accented by the fact that that in Colorado's climate is more, in general, more radical.
It's a challenge, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it's a challenge, but it also presents us with some really interesting stuff. I think I might even be able to say is among the wines in America and Europe, whatever. I don't really know about South America too much, but year to year, things change more. A lot. We live in a mountain climate with these amazing microclimates that make for a different tempranillo, a different whatever every year.
Many of you heard from Brent Hellickson not too long ago, and he lives in a different universe.
I know. Yeah.
So in this context of from year to year, the wines can vary in any number of ways. Surely you must have a customer base that comes back to the winery year after year and is interested in buying these wines. What's that experience like of the discussion that goes on over a period of years with customers who have been drinking your wines over a period of time?
Okay, one of the things that I
Not so
that I
dissimilar from
think
this one.
is that people, I believe, like people like my wine. Okay, and I think a lot of what they like is a result of our style of winemaking, as much in a way as the terroir of the grape, the fact that it's Colorado wine, other things. The style of winemaking puts itself into whatever the varietal is and whatever the blend is. It will all, one person who likes that style, who likes the result of that style, will like that style and may not. If I make a meritage, as they say, of Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot, they may like my style, as our style, excuse me, as more than they like California wine, which is made from the same varietals. And of course, those varietals are a little different in California than they are here because of the terroir. That's true. But I think the style is really, it's almost like music. It's like what what.
It's very organic in nature.
Yeah. Anyway, that's.
Eames,
I couldn't agree.
Eames and Devin, could you, speaking of music, could you speak to what you have talked about for years, which is the value added, if you will, of vocal music in your wine cellar?
Well, as we, yeah, and Robin, for the rest of you, Robin is a part of this too. He's helped me to make wine, helped us. I really, we're going to go out there a little bit here into the little esoteric kind of thing here. I think wine is alive, and you know, it's a little like a child. So we look at our wine as if it, and try to raise it like a child while it's, when we bring it into our environment, and we try to treat it that way. And I think it's very responsive to vibrations. Music is a vibration, and when we attain some of the harmonies that we've produced down in the cellar, particularly, of course, during the barrel tasting with the madrigal group, those harmonies penetrate the wine, and I really do believe that they influence it. And well,
Not dissimilar to
it
what
goes
you-
on.
Can I interject something?
Yes,
Could I interject
please.
something here?
Please do.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to say, I'm an audiologist. I'm not a vintner, but I've been on this this track the whole way. And Eames used to actually put a speaker out and play classical music to the grapes. For a couple years, 3 or 4 years, I think we did that when we first started the vineyard. And I have to say, at one point in time, we went to California and I said, why do they not have netting on their grapes? And he said, there's not enough birds. Everybody in Colorado has to net their grapes. We have small vineyards here, and our vineyards have different personalities every year. So I really have to admire my son and my husband, because they take a real careful look at what they do with the grapes from the time they are grown, who they buy them from, how they grow them, what the grapes taste like when they pick them. They are real picky about when they pick them. So they have a hand in every little piece of that winemaking, from the time the grapes are just barely a bud all the way to becoming a wine. And I really appreciate, and even the tasting, I've had the pleasure of being in on that tasting, and it's like cooking. It's like, every year they have an opportunity to create something, and that is a creation of that year, and even though it has a similar taste from year to year, it has these things of when the frost happened, and how that different grape tastes, and how you mix it with some other grape that tastes like that. And these guys are really careful about making that happen, and I appreciate that from somebody who likes to cook.
I have one question. Alfred.
Oh, wait a minute, Uli, 1 second. I just want to thank
Oh.
my sweetheart. Okay, go ahead, Uli.
Yeah, one question. Did you ever make wine from one variety to sell? Not a blend, just one Merlot or something.
Pinot Noir.
Yes. We do. We make Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Actually, the Tempranillo is well, it's usually between 85 and 90% Tempranillo, and the Pinot Noir is Pinot Noir. We originally, when we first started out, we made a straight Cabernet Sauvignon and a straight Merlot, and but I just found that I thought that we made better wines blending them, and one of the first times that that came about was 2000, I believe 2002. We we made we did our blending, and then at the end of it, we just blended everything we had, which was about 8 varietals or 9, and it turned out that that was the best wine that we tasted, I think, by anybody's thing. And so we
Oh, there's something here.
yeah. But the marketing of that was a little difficult, so we didn't actually market that. We just drank it ourselves. Speaking of which, Devin and I have now drank because we've been enjoying this, and we've gone through a bottle and a half of the Tempranillo. And anyway, any other questions?
I don't.
Yeah, I'm actually, so Alfred, you talked about when you were 18, you were in Spain and tasted the wines, and I'm sort of curious about your son, and Devin, about your, I mean,
Your story.
You
What's your
grew up,
story?
you grew up around all of this, but then how do you come to this?
Well, I was born to.
Why not? Of course.
What's not to like?
Of course. It was only
Oh
natural.
yeah. I mean, it's an old world story, indentured servitude, and so on and so forth. Yeah. No. I
Cheap labor.
Yeah.
Indeed. No, I have loved being brought up doing what I have been doing with my father all these years. Inevitably, when you are raised in a town such as this, no matter what the circumstances, you leave and you explore a reality of your own. And so I did for a long time. I built the winery with my father. I mean, that was my upbringing. My upbringing was wine and bucking bales and a few other things, but mostly wine. And inevitably, it came back to this world, this place.
But you didn't go off someplace and study wine making or work in some other winery or anything. I mean, you grew up around this, you went off and did a variety of things, and then ultimately came back and did this, all because this was what you knew and loved.
Yeah, unknowingly to me, I did indeed drink wine in many places.
Haven't we all?
I think it's
Well, it's
weird.
important. You must taste to.
Oh yeah, the love has to come first.
Well, it's been a
Yeah,
pleasure. It's been a great pleasure.
It
So
has
Pat-
been.
So Patrick, is that the next generation winemaker?
Oh, there! Look at that.
We hope
Where?
so. We hope so.
Oh, there you go.
Hi,
Milo Crew is his name.
Milo.
Oh,
How adorable.
I got one that looks just like it, buddy. Hope to know you. Me and my old friends talked about doing some things that you were doing now, we combined wine and beer a long time ago, just as boys hanging out here. I'm glad to see you experimenting with the idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Alfred, I have one more question.
Hi.
I live up on Pitkin Mesa, and when I look out of my window, I look down upon your winery. What is the percentage of your own production, or what do you buy from other sources for your winemaking?
Well, that's once again a discussion from one year to another.
Yeah.
The production here varies greatly, even more so than our friends on the southern facing slope. We lose a lot from one year to another. So it could be a percentage all the way down to absolutely nothing. And that's why we kind of covet the estate bottles so much, because what we get off of this vineyard is miraculous, and that's why we continue to do it, but it is unreliable at best.
Speaking of the estate, what year was that you had that estate bottle Pinot Noir that was fabulous and won awards? And
well, if we continue to answer them, most of them.
Yeah, we dropped out of contests about 7 or 8 years ago. Just got disinterested in doing the wine, what do they call them, awards kind of thing. You know, but I think you might be referring to
9.
Yeah,
09?
somewhere between 5 and 09. Pinot here.
Fabulous years.
It's hard for me to remember. But if you if you're interested, we're just now reorganizing our wine library we have a few cases, not much, of some of the older vintages, and we're going to be tasting some of those older vintages again and see how they've done. We have a Pinot from 2001 to now, and we're going to be tasting those and taking some notes, and maybe I'll be able to get back to you on that.
Yeah, that was whichever year it was great.
Sorry, man. The awards themselves are hanging on the barn wall somewhere. We don't pay much notice to it.
Yeah, we had a few awards, but we made a wind chime out of them because it was like. Okay.
Well, I very sincerely hope you all enjoyed the Tempranillo. If you have anything to say about it, I'd love to hear it.
It's great.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you.
That's sound.
I don't have a question, but I have a confession. I came to this wine tasting a little hesitant about what these Colorado wines would be like. I've lived in the state just about 5 years, and I love big reds. And I've experimented a little bit tasting some of the Colorado wines, but I just did not find anything that I enjoyed. And if I tallied it up right, 7 of the wines that we have tasted have been reds. And of those 7, 3 I think are fabulous wines, including this Tempranillo. I really like it. So I hope I can get some more of it. And there were 3 others that I really enjoyed. So I have been surprised and pleased and delighted, really, to be a part of this. And I want to thank everybody for their efforts. It's been a great experience. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Dan, that was very nice. Thank you so much. I think it was a great event also. I think we learned a lot. It was a collaboration between the Blue Sage and all the wineries, between the North Fork, Palisade, and yeah, I mean, I've had people walk into the Blue Sage and say, okay, you need to do this again next year.
Yeah, I
So-
second the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And as East Coasters who are the most far removed, with the exception of being related to Uli, it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating to hear each of the vintners talk about their wines and their styles and their techniques, and there are certain themes that
and their
emerge.
personal stories.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and you should definitely do it again.
Yeah.
And I have to add one more word with what Stephen said. Something that struck me about all the vintners is their passion. They have tremendous passion, all of them, for what they're doing. Not to mention, obviously, their knowledge is amazing to me. It's not as simple as one might think, but obviously all of you love what you're doing, and it shows in the wines. Thank you.
Well,
I'm
anyone
gonna cancel- oh, sorry. I'm going to cancel all my California clubs and go with Colorado.
Well, if no one else has anything to say, I guess we're going to conclude the Blue Sage virtual wine tasting.
Thank you, Deborah.
2021.
Thank you very much.
Well, there's a lot of people who went into this, so thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Happy
you,
New
Deborah.
Year.
Cheers to the Blue
Happy
Sage.
Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.